there are no blessings in a pandemic. We know that. But if there was a silver lining in this cloud of disease, it would be, in my opinion, the fact that many Black parents, for the first time, were forced to take control over their children's education. And in being forced to take control over their children's education, I believe many of them, and I've heard from a lot of them, they are now empowered to continue homeschooling their children. So although I do agree that there are a lot of children who have been getting no education, as Dr. Perry said, on the flip side, there's a lot of our children who have been getting a much better education as a result of being home. I know that I do a lot of one-on-one consultations with Black parents, and I'm hearing the success stories. There's a lot of parents who are now questioning whether or not their children really have these so-called reading disabilities and these so-called math disabilities and these so-called mild intellectual disabilities. And so although for some it's a challenge, for others, it has been a rebirth of the Black parents' ability to educate their own children at home.
If I could jump in.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the most important experiences that this has produced is that Black people have recognized what many of us who have been in the schools have been trying to say, that your children have been being played in a real way. The fact that only 18% of all children in America in kindergarten are Black and 48% of all children who are suspended in kindergarten are Black is an indication of the most racist system in America, which is the American public education system, which by design over-identifies children for what they would consider special needs, and by design suspends, expels, and disciplines children for being kids, and by design doesn't put children in positions to read, write, and compute on the same grade level, and finally, by design, is more comfortable with spending 3 times as much money to lock that child up than they could spend on to send them to a good school. There's a reason why children are still going to schools in the neighborhoods into which they are born. It is because by design, the system's purpose is to make sure that we only leave in cuffs or in a body bag.
Well, let me tell you something. That's so good. I'm going to take a break. Hang on to add to that. We'll be right back, everybody. The Book of Sean on Fox Soul. Dr. Johnson, let me ask you a question. And we've been operating at 50,000 feet for a little while, but I want to start to drill down and do some specifics for a second. And here's my question to you, and I think you're uniquely suited to answer this question. What subjects don't we teach that we need to start teaching Black children in schools?
That's an excellent question. I want to go back to your previous comment for 5 seconds. You talked about whether it was a good idea to integrate in the first place. I want your listeners to understand that there were a lot of African-American leaders and activists who did not support the 1954 United States Supreme Court school desegregation decision. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois was one of them. Zora Neale Hurston, one of our greatest writers of the Harlem Renaissance, she was another. And we also want our community to understand that the schools did not desegregate to give African-American children a better opportunity to learn. The reason the schools desegregated is because our children were learning better and outperforming white students in those dilapidated one-room schoolhouses in the South. Keep in mind, Dr. Sean, half of what America uses came out of the mind of a Black person, and it came out of the mind of a Black person before the schools desegregated. The stoplights, the gas masks, the baby carriage, the walkie-talkie. We can go on and on. The reason they desegregated is because they were afraid of the intellectual potential of Black children. And although we hear a lot of people talk about how intellectually delayed our children are, nothing could be further from the truth. When you study the intelligence of African babies, birth to age 5, African American babies from birth to age 5 outperform the children of every other race, including the Chinese, who we've been told are so intellectually inferior. So let us be clear. There was nothing wrong with those schools except that they didn't have the resources that they needed. Now, your question, quickly. I'm going to give you 3 things that are not taught that need to be taught. Number 1 used to be taught and needs to be put back in the schools, and that is industrial education. Up until the 1970s, there was no you automatically go to college after you graduate. Don't get me wrong. I have 6 degrees. I love my collegiate experience, but we can all agree that in 21st century America, college is putting more Black families into debt long-term than it is providing them with opportunities. Right. We are seeing children with master's degrees and doctorate degrees cannot find work. There are 2 million African Americans in this country with graduate degrees who are unemployed. So what needs to go back into the public schools, Dr. Sean? What happened to the electric program, the carpentry program, the HVAC program, the computer networking program? Most of our grandparents live comfortable, successful lives without collegiate degrees because they knew how to use their hands. Up until 1970, the high schools used to teach us the skills that pay the bills. And in 2020, the high schools are no longer teaching the skills that pay the bills. And that's why we're seeing this alarming growth rate in the mass incarceration of young Black males, because the high schools no longer have the skills that pay the bills. And I'll leave it there.
No, I appreciate that tremendously. Tiffany, I saw when Dr. Johnson was talking, I saw you responding with the shaking of your head, and I want to give you an opportunity to jump in on that. Anything you want to add? Any subjects you can think of or want to add to what he was saying?
Sure. I think it's important to also realize that the schools, because of what we know around the systematic institutionalized racism, has definitely contributed to the ideas of teaching from a culture of poverty, meaning that they're teaching students believing that they have deficits and that they are not able to learn. So what we need to start doing is teaching with a growth, having children understand that they can learn with a growth mindset, that they don't need to be a dependent learner and depending on what the teacher is telling them. They need to understand they can be independent and learn information and process it on their own. Furthermore, there has to be more information, more teaching strategies around culturally responsive teaching, diving deep into culture and understanding what that is and how it impacts students as learners for them to grow and process in the way they do, in the way they need to in order to get to the next level. I also wanted to give a quick quote because in regards to what Dr. Umar was saying, that intellect is the medium of exchange and power. Intellect is the medium of exchange and power. So we need to make sure that our kids are prepared to get to that next level, regardless of if, and what I also wanted to touch on was the fact that now we're working from an information-based society. So a lot of the industrial means of which students were learning from has kind of has decreased. So we need to ensure that kids are ready for ideas of like coding and decoding. STEM is fundamentally important, and it has to be a part of our ongoing commitment to educating children. I think you're absolutely right. And Dr. Perry, if I may, just because I want to pick up on what Tiffany is inviting us to consider, and I think she was the first one who started us along this journey. Dr. Perry, when African Americans came out of enslavement, one of the first things we did was build schools. One of the first things we did, a lot of the HBCUs were built 1867, 1869. You can go down the list. It was because our enslaved ancestors understood something about the power and the values, just what Tiffany said, of education, of what it could do, what it would mean, and how it would cultivate and sustain us. It seems as if
and I could be wrong, and you correct me, Dr. Perry, if I am, it seems as if that sensibility, that drive, as Booker T. Washington, I think, was the first to say, a whole race willing to educate itself, that drive has in some sense waned. And I'm wondering if you might be able to take me into why you think that's the case. So why is it, if it is the case, why did it happen?
I don't think education has gone out of style for Black people. I think we've always thirsted for it. In fact, that's the reason why some people will wake their children up to put them on a bus, to send them to their cousins in them's house, to get on another bus, to say that's the sound that they live in, so they go to a better school. It's the reason why people lie about their addresses. It's the reason why people apply to lotteries and or go to private schools. They doing what they can do, at least in their minds, to do it. It's the reason why they hire advocates to help them out when their child has been identified as having special needs, and they think, I don't really know that he has any special needs. He just needs, his only special need is to have a Black teacher in front of him. What we know is the issue may not be so much about what we teach as it is who's teaching it. There is, again, a systemic barrier that limits who can teach in the schools. When we look at the certification process, less than 33% of all African Americans who take what's called a praxis exam actually pass it. So you have 66% of the people who are African American can't take it. So who can't teach in America's public schools? I don't know, Barack Obama. Quite a few people who they may be accomplished in their careers, but could not teach history in their local school systems.
Dr. Perry, hold on a second. I got to take a break. Hold that thought. When I come back, I promise, we're going to pick up right where you left off, all right? Booker Sean, Fox Soul, got to take a break. I know how I feel the same way. Trust me. Welcome back, everybody, and I'm not going to belabor the point. Dr. Perry, continue.
So in order to teach in a public school, you have to be what's called certified. The certification process does not prove to improve instruction. It's just a barrier to mostly Black and Latino people becoming instructors in the public school system, which again, from an employment perspective, denies us access to these really good, secure jobs that allow us to move up socioeconomically. But more important than that, from an economics perspective, we know that an African-American child who has had access to at least one Black teacher before he goes into the third grade has at least a 30% chance higher of graduating and going to college. Ergo, if we know that increasing the number of interactions that African Americans have with Black teachers improves the probability of them not being suspended, not being expelled, not being overly identified as having special needs, not as if special needs in and of itself is inherently bad. It's the over-identification of it that's becomes a problem for us. Then imagine what we could do. So that's step one. But just for the second, if you just bear with me for a second, just imagine if white folks met us earlier. Imagine they don't have issues with superiority of African Americans in sports and music because they've seen us in that context. But imagine if African Americans were in a space where we were more often seen for what it is what we often are. Go to a barbershop, go to a community center, go to a church, go to so many places where you will see Black people teaching their behinds off, but not allowed to teach in a public school. So we need to make sure that more people of color, Black people in particular, are allowed to enter into a teaching profession, which specifically should occur through apprenticeship programs, meaning that you have a degree, you should be able to come into the schools and work through an apprenticeship program to become a full-fledged teacher. You should not, which is what you ultimately have to do with student teaching and the like. It's just that they have this test, this single test that stands in the way. And I'll finish here. I may lose as many as 80% of the African-American men teaching in one of my schools simply because of a test, one of whom had a 300% growth in math for my children. 300%. Young brother who graduated from Morehouse came back to teach in the hood, and I have to tell him, you can't teach anymore. Not because
because of one test.
That one test.
Wow.
Not results.
Wow.
One test.
Wow. You know, Dr. Johnson, the last time you were on the program, I think I said to you with consternation and a bit of shame that I had not had a Black teacher teach me until I got to college. Literally. I had not seen a Black person stand in front of a classroom and teach me anything until I had gotten to college. That's all of elementary school. That's all of high school. All of that. Be kind to me, sir, and tell me what you think about that. I'm fragile, Dr. Umar. Be kind.
Yes, sir. I want to go back and piggyback on what Dr. Perry said, all
Sure,
of
go
which
ahead.
I agreed with. Black people have to understand the nature and the purpose of standardized testing in America. It came to this country to serve as a means to deny opportunity to African Americans. Every test that has ever been used in America has served to control who could and who could not get the job. I don't care if it's the police test, the fireman's test,
Yes,
the intelligence
yes.
test. Every test serves to keep people in and to keep people out. Now, here's the question. What percentage of the variance of standardized testing is predictive of how well you will do having scored high on that test? Law school, business school, grad school, mentally gifted, state standardized assessment. Dr. Sean, it's less than 1%. Less than 1% of the variance of the test score is predictive of how well you will do. So the question becomes, if the test does not tell us whether you can finish law school, finish grad school, do well in a certain high school, why give the test at all? Because it is an effective pseudoscientific manner of excluding Black people, period. He also mentioned the teacher union.
Hold on. I gotta do this. Hold on. I gotta do that. That's how good that was. Keep going. And you're gonna answer my question too, by the way.
Yes, sir. But the teacher unions, the reason why you never see anything change in America, as he said, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association have so much money, so much political power, so much financial campaign donations that everyone is afraid of them. That's why Bill Clinton promised things, did nothing. Barack Obama promised things, did nothing. Donald Trump promised things, he will do nothing, because in order to become a governor in this country, in order to become a mayor in this country, in order to become a president in this country, there's two unions you must appease, the teachers and the police. And that's why they do nothing about police genocide, and that's why they do nothing about miseducation. They use white women to miseducate our children, and they use their white husbands to lock them up when they're done.
Okay, so after watching this video, you know what? It really fucking doesn't surprise me at all. This type of shit happens all the time in these public schools. They're literally designed in a way to limit Black people. Okay, and I feel like that's one of the challenges as Black people. We don't really seem to understand, you know, why would why would we expect these public institutions to really want to do what's best for us when they're literally designed to limit us, destroy us? They suspend us at the highest rate. They fuck with us in every meaningful way. And that shit just gets on my fucking nerves. I honestly hate the way that the public school system is designed. I hate it because I'm in it. I learned a lot from my experiences, but I honestly think, you know, I probably would have been better off just honestly being homeschooled, because like we just all know that this fucking, if you're listening, you know that the school system is designed basically to limit you. It's designed to I personally believe that Black people learn differently. We're visual learners. We have different ways of doing things. It's a Eurocentric education system, and we're not even really learning the same type of high quality. Depending on what school you go to, you're probably not really learning the same type of high quality education. I don't like that word education, because that word is associated with these types of institutions that are designed in such a way to harm us. But I like the word information. You know, I just feel like, honestly, fuck school. That's just how I honestly feel. And it's not fuck school, all schools. It's just fuck the American education system. It's just fuck the American education system as a whole. Um, I believe black people, we need to have our own schools personally. That, that can't be infiltrated. That is just real information. That is ours. I guarantee you, we won't even have half the fucking issues that we have to deal with, whether that's suspensions, whether that's issues with dress code, whether that's issues with somebody having their hair a certain type of way. This is just stupid to me. And so when I see this type of stuff, it doesn't surprise me. It's very disgusting. I personally believe they use things like labels like learning disability and all this other bullshit to really separate us, to really attempt to limit us and our ability to be successful and our ability to be looked at as who we are. That word learning disability, I would tell that bitch, whoever put that, your child in that type of label category, unless they legitimately have a learning disability, if you are able to have basic forms of living, if you're able to take care of yourself, if you're able to walk to school and just have reasonable conversations, you don't have a learning disability. Okay. And I see this, and while seeing this type of stuff, I realize, like, wow, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, this is the type of shit that they do to purposely separate us, segregate us, or do whatever. And a lot of people, especially black parents or people in general, they don't see that. That's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate, because all you're doing is you're putting the child in an environment to where it's not that they have a disability, it's the fact that that teacher isn't capable of educating that child in such a way to where they could use the information to be successful. And honestly, another thing is that a lot of the curriculum that is being taught in public schools, you will never fucking use a day in your life. So that's already a problem right there. What's the point of going 8 hours a day for some stupid ass information that you're never going to use in your life, or that's really never going to fucking serve you? It doesn't make much sense to me, but I don't give a fuck, because I don't care about that bullshit anyway. It's just crazy to really analytically sit down and just think about that shit. And they use, like, the disciplinary issues, they will do all types of shit to basically fuck with you in every meaningful way. It's so crazy to me. Like, we have some of the most talented black people. You could have some great black people in your community, but unfortunately, because of the system, the fucked up system, the American education system, your children will never get an opportunity to meet these people in school. And honestly, why have your oppressors try to teach you? What good is it to have your oppressors try to teach you information? It doesn't make sense. You have to wake up. You have to think outside the box. You have to get the fuck out of what you've been trained to do and start learning how to maneuver the system called America. And there's other things I want to say. There's a lot of other things I want to do. And I want to continue this. I feel real right now. I feel passionate about what I'm speaking about. And, I just want to be authentic. I just want to give people my perspective, my point of view, and really create something meaningful that everybody, well, not everybody, but us as a community can really enjoy. And I feel like I'm passionate about this subject is because I dealt with the fucking school system. I dealt with bullshit. I dealt with the stupidest fucking issues at school, whether it was, always getting in trouble, not necessarily for doing anything, or just every time it just caused a lot of anxiety in my life. For example, like every time the phone would ring, I would think I'm in trouble because I would always be in the office. Teachers really wouldn't understand. You can't expect people different from you or that don't come from your circumstances or your background to really be able to understand you. So it's like, and they're already biased. We know that the American school system, and I'm sure school systems around the world are biased, but like they're already trying to do everything they can to limit your potential. They label children with learning disabilities, and I honestly think that should be illegal unless they have some type of critical illness to where like they're legally diagnosed professionally to have a disability. That should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to just label someone as a learning disability, put them in classes they don't need to be in, and put it for the intention of limiting their potential or limiting their outreach or whatever the fuck they use that system for. That should honestly be illegal, in my opinion. And I don't know, I might be just rambling, but I just felt like this is something I had to do. I just felt like this is something I had to speak about honestly and comfortably, and I had to get this off my chest. What good is it to have an idea but not be able to share that with people? What good is it to have a mission but not really be able to feel supported and complete that? And I know this is like my first rant or like my first piece of auditorial content, and so if you stick around, I really appreciate it. If you could share it with your family and friends, I really appreciate it. You don't have to agree with me, but we do have to be respectful. So we don't have to agree with each other, but we do have to respect each other. And much love. I have much love. I'm learning so much during COVID. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me personally is COVID-19, because I get freedom. I really get some fucking freedom. I'm not in a bullshit ass classroom. I'm not dealing with anything. I'm just speaking with you one-on-one, and I love that. And I have a lot of time on my hands, which is a beautiful thing. So I appreciate you listening to this. And if you have any comments, questions, hit me up. Tell me what you think. Like I said, we don't have to agree, but we have to be respectful. Drop down your experience below in the comments. Let's talk about it. I personally been suspended a lot for the dumbest shit, and some of it was my fault, but I really just feel like I went to a bad school. And honestly, your environment will influence your decisions. But then again, they designed this shit on purpose, and I'll get into more details probably later about that. That'll be for another time. But I just want to say thank you, and you have a great day. Thank you.